The link uniting them represent three suns or three aspects of one sun, centers of effulgence. These also have their analogues in the three grand centers of the human body, which, like the physical universe, is a demiurgic fabrication. The first of these suns, says Thomas Taylor, is analogous to light when viewed subsisting in its fountain the sun. The second to the light immediately proceeding from the sun. And the third to the splendor communicated to other natures by this light. Since the superior or spiritual center is in the midst of the other two, its analogue in the physical body is the heart, the most spiritual and mysterious organ in the human body. The second center or the link between the superior and inferior worlds is elevated to the position of greatest physical dignity, the brain. The third or lower center is relegated to the position of least physical dignity but greatest physical importance, the generative system. Thus the heart is symbolically the source of life. The brain the link by which, through rational intelligence, life and form are united. And the generative system, or infernal creator, the source of that power by which physical organisms are produced. The ideals and aspirations of the individual depend largely upon which of these three centers of power predominates in scope and activity of expression. In the materialist the lower center is the strongest, in the intellectualist the higher center. But in the initiate the middle center, by bathing the two extremes in a flood of spiritual effulgence, controls wholesomely both the mind and the body. As light bears witness of life which is its source, so the mind bears witness of the spirit, and activity in a still lower plane bears witness of intelligence. Thus the mind bears witness of the heart, while the generative system, in turn, bears witness of the mind. Accordingly, the spiritual nature is most commonly symbolized by a heart. The intellectual power by an open eye, symbolizing the pineal gland or cyclopean eye, which is the two-faced Janus of the pagan mysteries. And the generative system by a flower, a staff, a cup, or a hand. While all the mysteries recognize the heart as the center of spiritual consciousness, they often purposely ignore this concept and use the heart in its exoteric sense as the symbol of the emotional nature. In this arrangement the generative center represented the physical body, the heart the emotional body, and the brain the mental body. The brain represented the superior sphere, but after the initiates had passed through the lower degrees they were instructed that the brain was the proxy of the spiritual flame dwelling in the innermost recesses of the heart. The student of esotericism discovers ere long that the ancients often resorted to various blinds to conceal the true interpretations of their mysteries. The substitution of the brain for the heart was one of these blinds. The 3 degrees of the ancient mysteries were, with few exceptions, given in chambers which represented the 3 great centers of the human and universal bodies. If possible, the temple itself was constructed in the form of the human body. The candidate entered between the feet and received the highest degree in the point corresponding to the brain. Thus the first degree was the material mystery and its symbol was the generative system. It raised the candidate through the various degrees of concrete thought. The second degree was given in the chamber corresponding to the heart, but represented the middle power which was the mental link. Here the candidate was initiated into the mysteries of abstract thought and lifted as high as the mind was capable of penetrating. He then passed into the third chamber, which, analogous to the brain, occupied the highest position in the temple but, analogous to the heart, was of the greatest dignity. In the brain chamber the heart mystery was given. Here the initiate for the first time truly comprehended the meaning of those immortal words, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. As there are 7 hearts in the brain, so there are 7 brains in the heart, but this is a matter of superphysics of which little can be said at the present time. Proclus writes on the subject in the first book of On the Theology of Plato. Indeed, Socrates in the first Alcibiades rightly observes, that the soul entering into herself will behold all other things, and deity itself. For verging to her own union, and to the center of all life, laying aside multitude, and the variety of the all-manifold powers which she contains, she ascends to the highest watch-tower offerings. And as in the most holy of the mysteries, they say, that the mystics at first meet with the multiform, and many-shaped genera, which are hurled forth before the gods, but on entering the temple, unmoved, and guarded by the mystic rites, they genuinely receive in their bosom heart divine illumination, and divested of their garments, as they would say, participate of a divine nature. The same mode, as it appears to me, takes place in the speculation of wholes. For the soul, when looking at things posterior to herself, beholds the shadows and images of beings, but when she converts herself to herself she evolves her own essence, and the reasons which she contains. And at first indeed, she only as it were beholds herself. But, when she penetrates more profoundly into the knowledge of herself, she finds in herself both intellect, and the orders of beings. When however, she proceeds into her interior recesses, and into the adytum as it were of the soul, she perceives with her eye closed without the aid of the lower mind, the genus of the gods, and the unities of beings. For all things are in us psychically, and through this we are naturally capable of knowing all things, by exciting the powers and the images of wholes which we contain. The initiates of old warned their disciples that an image is not a reality but merely the objectification of a subjective idea. The image of the gods were nor designed to be objects of worship but were to be regarded merely as emblems or reminders of invisible powers and principles. Similarly, the body of man must not be considered as the individual but only as the house of the individual, in the same manner that the temple was the house of God. In a state of grossness and perversion man's body is the tomb or prison of a divine principle. In a state of unfoldment and regeneration it is the house or sanctuary of the deity by whose creative powers it was fashioned. Personality is suspended upon a thread from the nature of being, declares the secret work. Man is essentially a permanent and immortal principle. Only his bodies pass through the cycle of birth and death. The immortal is the reality. The mortal is the unreality. During each period of earth life, reality thus dwells in unreality, to be liberated from it temporarily by death and permanently by illumination. Insert. Hand decorated with effigies of Jesus Christ, the Virgin Mary, and the 12 Apostles. From an old print, courtesy of Carl Oscar Borg. Upon the 12 phalanges of the fingers, appear the likenesses of the Apostles, each bearing its own appropriate symbol. In the case of those who suffered martyrdom the symbol signifies the instrument of death. Thus, the symbol of St. Andrew is a cross. Of St. Thomas, a javelin or a builder's square. Of St. James the Less, a club. Of St. Philip, a cross. Of St. Bartholomew, a large knife or scimitar. Of St. Matthew, a sword or spear, sometimes a purse. Of St. Simon, a club or saw. Of St. Matthias, an axe. And of St. Judas, a halbert. The apostles whose symbols do not relate to their martyrdom are St. Peter, who carries 2 crossed keys, 1 gold and 1 silver. St. James the Great, who bears a pilgrim's staff and an escallop shell. And St. John, who holds a cup from which the poison miraculously departed in the form of a serpent. See Handbook of Christian Symbolism. The figure of Christ upon the second phalange of the thumb does not follow the pagan system of assigning the first person of the creative triad to this position. God the Father should occupy the second phalange, God the Son the first phalange, while to God the Holy Spirit is assigned the base of the thumb. Also, according to the philosophic arrangement, the Virgin should occupy the base of the thumb, which is sacred to the moon. Continued. While generally regarded as polytheists, the pagans gained this reputation not because they worshipped more than one god but rather because they personified the attributes of this god, thereby creating a pantheon of posterior deities each manifesting a part of what the one god manifested as a whole. The various pantheons of ancient religions therefore actually represent the catalogued and personified attributes of deity. In this respect they correspond to the hierarchies of the Hebrew Kabbalists. All the gods and goddesses of antiquity consequently have their analogies in the human body, as have also the elements, planets, and constellations which are assigned as proper vehicles for these celestials. 4 body centers are assigned to the elements, the 7 vital organs to the planets, the 12 principal parts and members to the zodiac, the invisible parts of man's divine nature to various supramundane deities, while the hidden God was declared to manifest through the marrow in the bones. It is difficult for many to realize that they are actual universes. That their physical bodies are a visible nature through the structure of which countless waves of evolving life are unfolding their latent potentialities. Yet through man's physical body not only are a mineral, a plant, and an animal kingdom evolving, but also unknown classifications and divisions of invisible spiritual life,